All right, man. I think we're going for it. All right, tell us what's up.
So I was going to talk about some books I've read recently,
Right. Robert Book Club. Let's do it.
But do you read books?
I'm like Trump. I say no. Isn't that what Trump said? He doesn't really read books. Or is that George Bush? I don't remember.
I forgot, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, do I read books? I haven't. I mean, it's one of those things I know it's probably good for me, but I just haven't lately. I have some on my Kindle. I had some books I read on my Kindle a while back. I can pull those up, but yeah, nothing like paper. I have this like big Warren Buffett biography, The Snowball, like the really famous one.
Oh, I heard
a while ago, but I never read it. I bought it like many years ago. It's probably on discount, but I never read it because it's giant. Sorry, tell us about your books. I'm gonna grab a drink.
Oh, and since we're on Warren Buffett, did you see there's like a video biography on him
recently?
Like a couple years ago, maybe.
I'm sure it's good.
And there's a funny anecdote where he's talking to he's visiting a high school and he's telling them about the importance of health, right? And he says, imagine if you get a beautiful car, the one catch is this is the only car you're going to get in your life, then you're going to take care of it. And then he says, you should do the same thing with your body. But then in the very next scene, he goes to a McDonald's.
Oh, yeah. He eats like the McDonald's diet, right? Like someone tried to, for BuzzFeed, they're like, I try to eat like Warren Buffett for a week, right? He had the big Cokes and the cheeseburgers and stuff.
Yeah.
That's good genes. Yeah. Some people can just live forever like that.
But anyways, you don't, so these days.
I have not read much these days. I mean, it's sad because like, I just end up just reading random articles and stuff. I mean, the articles I read aren't that terrible, right? But they're like tech news or research or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they're not that bad, but they are still more bite-sized, right? I just have like, if I pull up my phone, I probably have a few queued up in my browser. Yeah. And then if I have some downtime, I just skim through it, or like before bed or something, I skim through it. Yeah. But I don't do the physical book reading or even the Kindle book reading. I have a few Kindle books that I have, but they just haven't engaged me as much. Mm-hmm. But yeah, tell me about your book.
Well, I guess books are more relevant to me because I'm into business, and I guess being a professor, there probably isn't that much good literature on, like self-help, how to be a professor, right? Like it's probably not as profitable to write a book on how to be a professor.
So. Profitable in general, in the entire field, probably.
So, I mean, maybe you're not neglecting any golden nuggets out there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm missing something. So maybe if I'm missing something, I don't know I'm missing it. Right? Mm-hmm. I don't feel like... Yeah, so I guess there's two kinds of reading, right? There's the reading literature, entertainment reading, and then there's the practical reading, tactical and strategic reading. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm missing anything on the professional front by not reading books. So is your book reading mostly professional?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think of it like a breadth first search. Like just, your life is one way you learn lessons, but then like ideally, if you read regularly, then you'll encounter things in the book before you have to make that mistake.
Edmund Lau, who was on this podcast, he was a big reader for a while. I think he probably still is, but he had a very similar mindset of like it's just a very high leverage way to go because you can just skim through these really fast and then see how people in different situations in different fields tackle similar challenges. So he read a lot for a while. I'm sure he still does. But it's similar.
But for you, like there isn't. Were there moments where you're like, oh, I wish someone had told me this, or you don't really encounter that as much, it sounds like?
I mean, I think there are possible pitfalls. I think I would get that data from talking to people. So, or more oral history, I guess, of talking to people and direct observations than the book reading. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, maybe earlier on in my career, there were articles, right? Like blogs or interviews or those things I probably paid attention to. I'm sure I was more open to that. But yeah, it was less like... And I think like the book thing is weird too because like academia is different in what field too, right? So like there was this book that my undergrad advisor gave me. I think he gave this to every student who went to grad school. It's called like, oh my God, it was called like Getting What You Came For, and it was about like a guide to the PhD or whatever, right? So there's like this big book about the PhD, and it was like written by someone in the life science, and like it was not bad. Because you expect those to be kind of hokey and like, oh, work really hard. And so, because you're like, who can write a book that's so generic? Right?
Yeah.
So it was not terrible, right? and it was like about, like you must, get your stuff printed out, your reports printed out, and use your whiteout and stuff. It was written in the 70s probably, but like it was not bad in the general scheme of things, right? So, but yeah, besides that, there wasn't much in terms of book learning. I'm curious about your thing in business books, because like there's an old adage about business books about how they don't have much content, right? They're like, oh, you can just summarize it and stuff. But do you find that diving in deep actually helps, even though a lot of it might seem superficial?
Yeah, I get the mindset that, in general books are bad, or in general
Business
there
books,
are a lot
the
of trashy books, right? But
like the business books, the
Yeah.
self-help business ones.
But an example of some value I get from reading books, there's a book called The $100 Startup. It's just about, people who bootstrap startups. And like one of the key values I got was just seeing a bunch of examples of businesses that work,
Yep.
And then so you could think about, you kind of improve your pattern recognition in terms of like what people are willing to pay for.
Yep.
And, that has direct relevance to what I do. And then another book, have you read Sapiens?
No. I've heard of it, but
Yeah,
that's not
yeah.
about business, right? That's
No. It's just a general book. Yeah, it's just about human history.
Seems pretty general.
But I mean, there were a lot of good tidbits. I mean, it's not like super directly relevant, but it's just. Anyways, I could give some tidbits. So it's human history, and we're Homo sapiens, right? And then at some point there were Neanderthals too on this planet, and the question is, like, when Neanderthals and Homo sapiens coexisted, at some point Homo sapiens won.
Over. Yeah.
And it's like, why did Homo sapiens win? Because Neanderthals, they have a similar brain, and they were capable of thinking as well.
Yeah.
And the conclusion that the author came to was that it was really the Homo sapiens' ability to cooperate that allowed them to win it, and cooperate in terms of like believing in fictions like country or in
like social groups or bands. And
yeah, because if
things are greater than themselves, and they might be made up things.
That's right. So if it's purely like one-on-one relationships, you can't get a country, or you can't get an empire. But if you believe in something larger than yourself, then that's a way to achieve large-scale cooperation. And another tidbit in the book is that gossip is typically thought of as like a low human activity, but what gossip does from a evolutionary standpoint is it helps people like spread the reputation of a particular person, and that achieves trust, right? And so like just tidbits like that, it was really eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, those things have been floating around for a while. Yeah, I mean, the gossip thing, right, and the reputation thing, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's sort of a way to hopefully help people tend toward behaviors that are, that are more social and less antisocial, right? That if you're in a community, a tribe, you don't want to be the outcast, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be known as the person who stole or whatever, right? If you're in a tribe, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think those things are really applicable to everything. The next thing you're going to say is the art of war or something.
Oh, no, I mean...
Not going to the art of war yet.
I think my wife is reading that book.
The art of war, yeah.
Yeah, like when I was in college, there's this list of like great books in history, right? And one of them is Art of War. Another one's The Prince, right? And I flipped through both. The Prince is actually quite good. Art of War... I read it, it's kind of cool, but I never really got into it.
It's kind of abstract, right? Probably.
Yeah, it's a little abstract, like, pretend you're weak.
Yeah.
that type of thing. And, like, maybe I'm too dense to get this deeper wisdom, but yeah, the Prince is definitely good, and then Art of War I've only skimmed. I've never really...
Well, I like the example. I mean, I would buy the business thing for examples, right? I really like that idea of, and there's also, this Founders at Work book.
Yeah,
right? That was really early on, like 2007, right?
Yeah.
When Y Combinator first started. And that was cool because they just interviewed a bunch of, older time startup and software entrepreneurs. And it was just good to hear their stories, right?
Yeah.
And I like these case studies of, if you're talking about bootstrap business and that's the category you're in, you want to see 100 of them, and that'll be really cool, right?
Yeah.
Just seeing a bunch of examples, and even if they don't really say much that's generalizable, if you see, out of 100 people, 90 of them said, it's important not to spend too much money in the beginning, or it's important not to outsource this thing. They maybe that's something there. Right?
Yeah, and I think for me, a lot of the value comes from what was I trying to say? I think with something like a business, I think certain personalities, myself included, there's this temptation to like be original or be creative, and like you can. I don't want to like attack that too much, but like there are certain patterns of business that work pretty well, and like unless you have a good reason to deviate from it, you should try to repeat stuff that has been proven to work. And so, for example, like how do you reach large numbers of people, right? How do you come up with a message that's compelling enough that where it spreads naturally, right? And if you look at examples of companies like Dropbox or YouTube, like where you get massive adoption, it there's a little bit of pattern recognition in terms of okay, like what for all these companies, there's like a crisp value proposition that you could easily talk about, and like stuff like that. It's
just like crispness, and you see the examples of that.
Yeah. And so by seeing enough examples, you could kind of distill certain principles that okay, companies that do well tend to have these properties, right? And if you're missing one of those properties, then you got to think hard about like, can I survive without that, or like should I think harder about how to achieve it?
Yeah, I really like that. That's the idea that right, that if it's an exception, if you're an exception to some rule, you better have a good reason.
Yeah.
You don't need everything on the checklist, but you're gonna have to work extra hard to make up for it if you don't have one of these things. Maybe. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I mean, I guess the simplified view of a lot of these business books is that they're very self-helpy and such. But if things are a bit more empirical and they don't cast it as here's my revolutionary technique for 5-step guide to this, rather than like here's a bunch of examples, and that seems pretty informative.
Yeah,
and that's sort of like you talking to all those 100 people.
Yeah,
in a way, right?
Yeah, and then like I don't want to hit too hard the self-help stuff because I like that stuff too.
Oh, man, you're all about the self-help. Yeah.
I mean, it's important in business. It's especially important.
Do you think that's for motivation more, or for just actually practical things, or just to get your morale up and get you to be motivated?
Part of it is just being motivated enough to make progress day by day, and then another part is just when you're talking with others, getting them to see you as someone credible. Right, like
like a way to present, like the influence book or those kinds of things.
Yeah, a way to. I mean, like you don't have to necessarily get a deal from someone, but just like
the way to present.
If you're having a casual conversation, right? Like if you present yourself as someone who is worth talking to, then they're gonna think harder about what you're saying, and like I think if you present yourself as someone who can be written off, then. The conversations tend to be superficial and like, oh, nice to meet you, and then have a nice day type thing. Like I've seen both cases where sometimes people aren't really feeling meeting you, and they kind of move on. And then other cases where you have some rapport, then you dig deeper, and you have a conversation with some substance. And I think sometimes you can get written off in a casual meeting by not being confident enough in yourself, and so.
Oh, I see. So it's not that these self-help things are like, here's a way to present yourself in this way. It's just building up that self-confidence so that it just comes more naturally in a way.
Yeah, I mean, so there's one author in particular. His name is Brian Tracy. I mean, he's old school, but like I discovered him relatively recently, and there's this one. It sounds so corny, but he says to tell yourself, "I like myself," right? And like to most people, it's like, it's almost, it's very awkward to do that, right? Because like, oh, like one, like I'm really buying into this self-help thing, and like
you have to admit that you're buying into it.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't work or whatever. But I think a lot of people, I'm including myself, you grow up with like a very self-critical mindset,
right.
And maybe guilt and shame are like dominant emotions. In social interactions, and to remove that, it really helps. You quit wasting energy in things you don't have to waste it in, and just this idea. I mean, especially in business, I think maybe in academia it's a little different. In academia, you write a paper and then you submit it, and then the paper kind of stands alone, right? And maybe your reputation kind of follows you a little bit, but like,
right.
if the paper is good, odds are it's going to get in, right?
There's an artifact there, or you have a better odds, right? Even if you're a super famous person, if you just write a bunch of gibberish, it's not going to get it.
That's right.
There's a bit more objectivity.
Yeah. Whereas in business, like, certain people that everyone thinks, oh, they're the next big thing, and then there's someone else with similar numbers or even better numbers, and then they're not really seen as part of the conversation. It's like, oh, why is that? I think a lot of times, like confidence, how you present the numbers goes a long way in people's determination of like how legit are you. And the reason why, like, I struggled with this for a long time. I was thinking, like, why do people write off the people who are not confident, right? It seems irrational. It seems like you could gain an edge as an investor by...
Because you get better terms for someone who have good numbers, but they're not as confident themselves. Maybe.
Yeah, but like the more I thought about it, it's like confidence is an asset, right? Like even if you have this ability to kind of see people whose businesses are healthier than they think it is, like the fact that it's being led by someone who's confident, like other people are going to be more likely to join them, and like it's not just you and the current state of
business. So that's not just a facade; it's an actual asset.
That's right. Yeah.
It's an actual asset that they can attract better employees. They can attract other investors, and you can do more business partners. Like that is part of the asset.
That's right.
The part of the founder first, like that is part of what they bring to the table.
And that's something that I struggled with, was that there's this notion that there's substance and then there's fluff, right? But then in certain domains, you have to be careful about where you draw that line, because stuff you write off as fluff is actually pretty essential to who makes it and who doesn't.
Man, that was deep. Head just flew.
But I mean, in academia, is there a dynamic like that? Maybe with grant writing, or maybe with...
Yeah, I feel like at the higher levels, I think that's right. I feel like at the rank and file levels, like me, I don't think it's as important. But I think at the higher levels, I think it would matter. Yeah. I mean, I think in any kind of leadership in the higher levels, I think it matters, right? Like if you want to, be in a leadership position in your university, or you want to be in a leadership position in your field, like being the president of your whatever field society. I feel like that is what you bring to the table, right? It's like, everybody is pretty, to be the dean or to be the president of your whatever society in your field, everyone who's being nominated is fairly influential and has a lot of papers and blah, blah. And the difference is who projects that confidence, who projects that leadership, right? Who can rally other people around initiative. So I think that's true. It's just that I feel, that there is room for the rank and file grinders like myself. So it's not an all or nothing thing. So I'm feeling that. All right, what else is on your list? You have like such a big list. All right, so let's just talk about the basics of the mechanics of you reading. When do you do it? How often? How much do you do? How regularly?
So I squeeze it in either in the morning or at night, and then in the morning is typically just audio. So oftentimes I'll buy the Kindle version and the Audible version.
Oh, nice.
Which is twice the price, but like if it increases the chance you'll read it and the rate at which you read it.
And they sync with each other?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So it's pretty good. And so the way I decide what to do is, if I'm not really feeling like reading, Audible is pretty good in that like it doesn't take that much active effort. You just turn it on, right? Whereas like a book, like chapter 9, just like
And you feel that you can still get it on audio. Where are you doing it when you're doing audio?
At home.
Just sitting? Or are you doing something while you're doing audio?
Sometimes we'll listen to it in the car. But a lot of times, I'm either sitting or just like walking around. Like,
so you're basically using it as a proxy for reading. Like you're only listening.
Yeah.
You're not multitasking.
No,
not at the gym or something, like exercising.
Oh, I do it in the gym too.
That's good. Exercising is good for audio.
So that's a good point. Yeah, one of the big benefits of audio is that it doesn't have to be the primary activity. You could do something else.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what is the rate at which you would want to read, ideally, or what would you actually do?
Like a book in a week and a half or so.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
book in a week and a half. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good rate.
I mean, what's motivating me now is that there's a relatively long list I want to read.
So you would just go through it.
Yeah.
And is there an order of this list? that you want to go through?
I mean, I think once I read a book, then I ask myself like, okay, what book do I want to read next? And I try to have it's really satisfying to read on a regular basis. Like you feel like you're making progress in some area of your life, and so like you know how video games, like how they give you this sensation of progress, right?
So you think reading got the same?
For me, reading does a similar thing. Yeah.
And do you feel like, how direct do you feel like the effects are on your work, or do you not care about the directness? You just want to absorb or do you really care about accountability? I want to read this book. I want to get better at X.
I think I read a book and I'm fairly confident that there's a positive impact on the work. It's not. I can't necessarily point to a specific thing, a deliverable, but it's more like I'm confident that I come to certain ideas faster. And I think confidence is a big thing too. I mean, confidence is something that you constantly have to work on, I think. Like just to, I think just day-to-day life, if you kind of neglect that part, you can...
And do you have a barometer of your confidence? Like every morning you get up, you're like, yeah, I'm really feeling it now. Or like, oh man, I haven't been feeling it for a while. Or do you kind of track that? Or do you just have a vibe of like, all right, this few months I'm not feeling it. And then I read these things and I'm feeling it every day now when I get up?
I think it's like when I'm just walking around or just seeing faces, right? Like, what's my gut reaction to, experiencing life? And I think when I'm feeling good, then like I'm smiling, I'm like not afraid of people, and I think when I've definitely had moments where, you kind of have your head down and you're just trying to survive, right?
Now, is that because you're too busy, or because you're too busy grinding on something, or because you're just not feeling in a good mood, like the head's down surviving?
I think it's a little bit of both. So like when you grind really hard, or when if I'm doing some task that is really mentally demanding, immediately afterwards I'm kind of frazzled, right? So I just kind of feel out of it, and but I think confidence, when I'm more confident, then I don't experience the lows as much, I think. Whereas like if I'm kind of at a low state in my life and I work super hard on something,
it gets even lower.
Yeah.
So the grad school is the worst end of it.
It's
pretty much the bottom of the barrel.
No, I'd say early on in the business is probably worse.
Oh yeah.
Because in grad school you have some, it's a legit thing, right? Like, I'm getting my PhD.
Oh, you have some legit status.
Yeah.
You're a student, you're a grad student.
Like if you say, I'm doing grad school in computer science at Stanford, people aren't like, like, are you sure about that? Whereas like anything business related, like before it gets off the ground, it always looks really sketch.
Yeah. Well, because everyone can say they're an entrepreneur. It's like everyone can be like, I'm starting my own company, I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah. This line between self-employed and unemployed is very, very thin.
So, do you think that just by virtue of having more monetary success in the business, that confidence comes directly with it, or do you still need that extra boost from, what is missing if you don't have the self-help books and you just had objectively how you were doing business-wise? Like, what would be missing by just having the numbers, I guess?
I think without looking at it in the right way, you can have good numbers and always compare yourself to someone who's better, right? And like, I think sometimes we get in that habit to as motivation, like, I'm not there yet, and you kind of beat yourself up, but like sometimes that's counterproductive, I think. To be too hard on yourself, and then you feel like that's propelling you to act. And sometimes it works, but like in general, I'm less a fan of that tactic now.
All right. So what are the other books on the list? You got so many.
Oh my gosh!
So what did you print out, and how many are on this list? Is this what you bought, or what?
This is my Audible library. So I
have all these books.
I've started this habit maybe like 5 months ago.
All right.
Yeah.
And you've read some of these, or a lot?
I've read 80% of these.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of these, like getting things done, I was feeling it at the beginning, but then like I quit in the middle. But then some of these are pretty good, like Man's Search for Meaning. This is a classic. Have you?
Oh, man, I don't know anything, man. I'm so not well read. All right.
I mean, I've heard about this book for the longest time. I think Tim Ferriss recommended it. But it's about this guy who was in a concentration camp during the Holocaust, and he just about his like day-to-day life there. And when you read it, you appreciate the net impact on me was you appreciate your day-to-day life more, like especially in the immediately after you read the book, you're like, wow, you're like, I'm so lucky to like not be there, you know, because it talks about how you know, he's barely surviving, and then you like when you get a slightly larger piece of bread, that's like the highlight of your day.
Jeez.
And you're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And then at some point they realize that, okay, that they're gonna be okay, right? Like I think like the war had ended. It was I'm probably gonna screw this up, but the basic idea was that like toward the end of the war, the SS people are like, okay, like we kind of surrendered, and so you're going to be free, but we're just going to take you to another part. And then like that first truck, I think they all like died or whatever.
God.
Yeah. And like luckily the author of this book wasn't on that first.
Wait, was that on purpose? Like they were killed, or they were just in an accident?
I think they were killed. Yeah.
So they're purposely. Like,
I think
executed.
so. Yeah. I don't want to butcher it, but that's
Yeah.
a basic idea. And so like he barely survived, and then.
Yeah.
But at some point, like you realize that you're actually free, and there's this ecstasy, right, where it's like I've been in this terrible existence for so long, and then I'm free. But then you think about it, you're like, oh, we're free, and we don't really appreciate it that much, right? Like especially compared to someone who's, you know. And so
It's
just
heavy really fast.
just this idea that your expectations have such a huge impact on your life experience.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah, that's intense, man. Maybe you just start your own podcast where you just tell these stories. That's intense. Yeah, well, I mean, everything is about your brain chemistry, right? So it's like if you could just somehow hack your brain chemistry to set the expectations properly or set the things. Yeah, I mean, you can imagine this, you know, the same thing happening to two different people in similar conditions, they react differently, right? It's like, you know, you both get an award or something, right? And one person's really ecstatic about it, one person's like, oh, I guess like that was cool and everything, but I want to do something else, right? So it's a less extreme case of that, but yeah, it's the expectations.
Yeah, another thing I want to mention about the book is that it makes it very clear that it's not like a good versus evil type of thing, like because the prisoners, there's kind of an economy there, and so you can, as a prisoner, you can serve certain duties, and so you kind of get some status. Like they incentivize the prisoners to participate in keeping this thing going, right? You can imagine, and some like prisoners, they do some terrible things to their fellow prisoners, right? Like to preserve their status, because you know, if you do that, then you have a slightly better existence than you would if you're lower status, right? And like,
oh,
yeah,
that's heavy, man.
Yeah,
Shoot.
it's crazy that I mean, this is, you know, our grandparents' generation, right?
Yeah, it's not even that long ago.
Yeah.
When like slavery, you know, when there's still, you know, unfortunately, you know, slavery in certain parts of the world, but you know, slavery in the U.S. was only like 5 generations ago.
Yeah.
It's like someone's grandparents, right, were slaves. Yeah, so it's not that long ago. And even now in the modern day, there's all these atrocities going on in many parts of the world, right?
Yeah.
That, you know, you could just go somewhere else, you know, you can find these things in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Shoot, man, that's just brutal.
So yeah,
That's sad.
This book has been on my list for a long time.
Ooh.
And so to finally finish it felt good. Yeah.
All right. Anything? What's next? That was heavy.
Principles by Ray Dalio. Do you know Ray Dalio?
Oh yeah, you told me about it. And I have some of his videos queued up.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I think still the barrier's too high. Like I don't know if I want to watch a 1-hour lecture about economics or something like.
Oh
things,
yeah.
Right? So I don't want to watch like a heavy lecture. But yeah, I've heard about him from you, and he was on the Tim Ferriss podcast. and stuff too. But yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, he has the book. I think has an accompanying video series too. So
so it's all material.
you can get some of the tidbits in like 5 to 7 minutes.
I think this stopped recording. Right? You can let's just chill. Okay, it says stop recording automatically. I think we can go like this again. All right, we're going up again. All right, so the big camera stopped after 30 minutes on 1080p. All right, so principles.
Principles, yeah. So the book is partly autobiography and then partly, like life or business advice or life advice or whatever, right? And the big event in his life was that he was an investor, and he kind of had a hot streak, but then he made this very big bet that went the other way, and that basically killed his career for a little bit. And so he started at zero and had to work himself back up.
Oh my god.
Yeah. This happened when he was around 30 years old.
So he already made a lot of money by 30.
Yeah, I think he was pretty good, and then like he was legit enough where I think the Congress invited him to discuss like the future of the economy or something, and then like he was very clear that it was going to go down, and then it went up, and he lost a ton of money. And
so by 30, if he had just stepped out, he would have been rich already. Like
pretty good.
He was already pretty solid, but he wanted to keep going, obviously.
I mean, yeah, now he's a billionaire, right? Yeah. He wasn't a billionaire then. But the key lesson he learned from that experience was that like you don't want to be super sure of your ideas. Like ideally you want to find other people you respect, present your ideas, see where they object to your thinking, and then after this back and forth you can make a better informed decision, right? You might still stick to your decision, but at least you got the viewpoints of a bunch of other people, and were able to integrate that feedback in terms of, is there some tidbit that I'm missing? Is there some important part of the question that I'm neglecting before I...
So I'm wondering, like, if you can distill a lot of these books into the flowchart format, right? Like that. I mean, not to say that in a pejorative way, but like in a practical way. I mean, because, the kind of diss that people have with all these business books, you can just put it all on an index card, right? But maybe that's actually a good thing for some of these, right? That, this thing you just said was about a flow chart of, you get feedback from 5 people, whatever, and you integrate, see where they diverge from yours, and you repeat a few times or something. And maybe these other ones have the flow chart model to them. I mean, did you think that that's how you distilled it into like, here's a set of steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think... So yeah, I'm aware of this criticism that like, you have a 200-page book and you really could have just said 3 sentences. But my counter to that, I mean, sometimes that's that's perfectly valid. Like they just stretched it because publisher said you have to write 200 pages. But sometimes the longer version has value, and I think where the value comes in is that like. We as thinking machines, we're not purely logical. We use a lot of intuition in order to navigate the search space, right? And so...
And stories, right?
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
And so by reading a book, you kind of get the concepts at a deeper level. And so I think it's good if you could read the book and then summarize it, right? But then hopefully you have a deper idea of...
or you made up the summary, right? Instead of just... Here's an index
card.
That's right. You're like, that looks tight, but I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
So there were certain books where, because there are book summaries available online, right? Yeah. And then so I'm like, let me read the summary first and see whether the book is worthwhile. So I read the summary, I'm like, yeah, kind of tight, and then I move on. But then I hear so many good things about the book, I'm like, hold on, was there something that I was missing, from the summary? And then I eventually read the book. I forgot which one. In particular, I went through this cycle, but like sometimes you read the book and you're like, oh, okay, like the bullet points don't necessarily resonate with you.
All right, I buy that. Yeah, I totally buy that. So I guess maybe it's just you just got to find the really good ones, right? That maybe the fact that if you just pick up a random business book on the shelf, most of them might be trashy because it's just turning it out, like at the airport bookshelf or something.
Yeah.
They're just turning it out. But yeah, I guess if you find the best one, that is more than the sum of the bullet points.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel that.
an example of this criticism being applied, and I haven't read this book yet, but Checklist Manifesto.
Yeah.
Like this idea that I think like a hospital used checklists and they dramatically improved their efficiency, and you would think that checklist is such an elementary tool.
Yeah.
How could it actually have this
The
profound
whole book.
Yeah, and so the summary is use checklist, right? Like I haven't read the book yet to see whether that criticism is valid, but I think a few people have criticized that book with that.
Right. That's just use checklists, but here's stories from like 10 fields where they use checklists. And
Yeah.
it sucked and they used checklists and that was awesome.
Yeah, and so if that's what it takes to convince you, then that could have But for that particular book, I haven't read it to really have an opinion. Like
I like the idea of you constructing your own thing from it, and I mean, you could say, this is just talking about non-fiction. They're supposed to, I mean, like people read fiction all the time, and it's like, yeah, you could summarize the fiction book, but no one thinks that that's a replacement for the book. Right? It's like, just give me the one-line synopsis of some fiction book. It's like, okay, that's great, fine. You can even tell me the ending, but I don't care because the reading it, that's what the experience is.
Yeah. Which reminds me, so the Stanford Theater that plays the old films.
Yeah.
So Priscilla and I, we watched Roman Holiday over the weekend, and I think it's a really good film. But have you seen it?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I saw a bunch back in the day. I mean, I don't know about that one particularly. I'm familiar with it.
Audrey Hepburn. Yeah.
But I get all of them mixed up, so I'm not an old film buff.
But anyways, we were with a friend over the weekend after we saw the movie, like the next day. And then Priscilla's summarizing Roman Holiday, and I'm just like, wow, this movie sounds so awful, even though it was really good. And so, yeah, like there's when you summarize something, there's...
Oh, yeah, especially fiction, right? That's the whole... really good literature. I mean, you can tell the whole ending. It doesn't matter because you want to see what the characters and all the flavors. All right, so you just got to go through more of them. I don't want to go through all of them. So you just got to... We can do a laundry list for a while.
Hold on, but do you read...
Do I read any books?
Do you read fiction?
Well, not that much. But the last fiction book I read was when I was in Rochester. It was Microsurfs. Do you know Microsurfs? This is like a book in the 90s.
I've heard of it.
It was surprisingly good. And it was about these people who worked at Microsoft. I mean, it's not called Microsoft, but it's supposed to be Microsoft. It's Seattle. It's rainy and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just about a bunch of, tech workers who worked at Microsoft in the early days, I guess, or, whatever Microsoft. And like, their camaraderie, and then the company grew, and then people kind of grew disillusioned or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But like, I just found it fascinating. I read it. This book came out in the mid '90s, I guess, around the first .com boom, right? That first .com boom. But I was fascinated because when I was reading it, it like felt so fresh, right? Like it felt like this could have been written like today, right? And like, well, this was like so many years ago, before the web or very early days of the web. Like that same kind of flavor of this young startup culture, like the Silicon Valley TV show. It felt very much like that. And then there's this other book called Moo, which has nothing to do with bovines, and it's about a life in a small town that is a college town that has one of these small liberal arts universities, and it was like for around there, and like these characters who all work at the university, and like I don't even remember what the plot was, but it was just a vignette of a lot of stories, and it was somehow very engrossing. But it was just a bunch of people in this small town working at this small university. And my mom had that book on her bookshelf since I was a kid, because I guess she was in university. Yeah. And I mean, we grew up in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, which wasn't a tiny town, but it was smaller, right? So then I never really wanted to realize what that book was, and I came back to it later for some reason. So the Moo book, which is about small town university, and Microsurfs, which is about tech workers, like those two were the last two fiction books I read for a long time, but I enjoyed them both because I have a pretty high bar for reading fiction, because I wouldn't just normally pick up a fiction book. But they're not like well known or anything.
So what made you read them?
I don't know. I think maybe I just saw some stuff online about Microsurfs. Maybe the Silicon TV show, Valley TV shows. I don't know. And I just picked it up on my Kindle and just read it. It was like very light reading, very engaging.
Oh, yeah.
The other one was just like, I guess I was in a small town in a college, and I just picked it up. But yeah, they're both, I read it when I was in Rochester. But since moving to San Diego 2 years ago, I've not read any fiction. I don't think I've read any nonfiction either. I probably read parts of nonfictions, but yeah, You're just putting me to shame, man.
No. So what do you do to wind down now?
YouTube videos. No joke. YouTube videos.
What are some recent?
As much. Oh, so my recent binge was, trashy Michael Jackson documentaries and gossip scandals about Michael Jackson. I don't know. I get onto these binges on YouTube, or just like old Michael Jackson interviews, or old live TV shows. Like I like watching YouTube because like you can see like old things, or people just upload old archival footage, which I think is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Right, just like old footage from the 80s from TV or whatever. Just like, and then it's always recommended. You just keep clicking. But yeah, that's what I do. I do YouTube, and then I read occasionally, but I don't read that much just because like even article because I'm like, the YouTube just feels a lot more passive, right? I just do it for a while, I get tired, and I just like go to bed. But yeah, I'm just totally brainless.
So do you multitask while you're doing the YouTube, or?
No, I usually am lying in bed at the end of the day. If I'm napping, if I want to nap, I just kind of lie in bed. I just like, put on some YouTube on the phone, and I just like turn it off, go to sleep. Or at night even, I just read a little bit with like a really low brightness on my screen, and then just YouTube. I have the night mode or whatever.
Yeah. Night
mode and low brightness. I don't think that's been a problem in terms of me falling asleep. Yeah, it's like you're not supposed to have a phone on in your bed or whatever, but that seems okay to me. But yeah, I have not wound down with anything like engaging intellectually at all, man. I'm so lowbrow now.
So the YouTube recommendations are good enough to like you don't have to search that hard to find good stuff.
Yeah, I mean they're all pretty trashy. That's the problem, right? It's like more Michael Jackson scandals, even more Michael Jackson scandals. It's pretty bad in that way, but it is addictive, which it serves its purpose. Yeah, I mean it's not great, but it's good for what it's meant for.
So what came before Michael Jackson?
I mean there's just spots of stuff, right? I mean I don't know. They're just I'm gonna scroll my phone. Let's see.
I mean you were Casey Neistat for a while.
Yeah,
right?
I do that. I do Casey Neistat. I mean I see that. I watch people who do skateboarding, do boosted boards. I watch skateboard videos.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, I watch skateboard videos. I watch, let's see, I don't know, just random stuff. Yeah, latest is chimp attacks.
What's that?
Because Michael Jackson had a pet chimp. Like, he had a pet chimp for a while, and I was thinking like how like you can't have an adult chimp with you because like they're so strong, right? Like they'll kill you. So that like that goes on to chimp attacks and like and everything.
Also, how did Michael Jackson have the pet chimp?
I think it was just a kid. He was a kid then, and they had like handlers, right? But he was a kid, and when he became older, I think they took him away. Yeah, I think he was like a child. Yeah. But
it's insane, dude.
Getting off on more digressions, but yeah, it's insane, man. But yeah, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but it is. I've survived so far, so. But yeah, but I think it goes back to the topic in the beginning, is that I'm not looking for anything tactical out of the reading, right, or the wind down. I mean, it seems like your business stuff is not really for wind down. Right?
No,
it's not wind down. It's part of. I mean, you consider it part of your work, pretty much in a way.
Yeah.
It's professional development, I guess.
Yeah, I guess some of these are wind down. Yeah.
Oh, the inspirational ones wind down?
Yeah, some of them. Yeah, so that's the tough part, is that the more useful it is, the less the more serious you are when you read it, and so the less it functions as a wind down tool. It's tricky. Because like ideally you would spend your time doing something with value, but then like when it's too valuable, then.
So why do you not want to do wind down YouTube like me, or just trashy wind down? What prevents you from wanting to just wind down brainless?
I think it's hard for me to find good YouTube content. I think that there were certain.
What does this be YouTube? It could be random articles, but I guess you don't want to go in the article rabbit hole, like the clickbait article rabbit hole.
I think it's
that's just bad. I guess.
That used to be my go-to thing, but...
Well, because you used to do a lot of clickbait business article stuff, right, and blog stuff. Hey, have you cut all that out? Because
I do.
Books?
Yeah.
Because the books are more substantive than the clickbait business.
Yeah, I do less of the clickbait business. I do basically zero hacker news.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, zero hacker news, zero Facebook.
You're clean.
Well... I do Yahoo.com though.
That's like the word. Yeah.
Yahoo.com That's what I use instead of YouTube, I think.
That's your vice, yeah.
'Cause
You got sports, you got everything, you got all the distractors.
Yeah, YouTube, there are certain interests I have, but I've done enough round trips through them, like Michael Jordan highlights.
Michael Jordan.
I've kind of watched the same videos like 10 or 12 times.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, but speaking of skateboarding, there is a book, The Rise of Superman.
Oh, what is that?
It's about extreme sports.
Oh, nice.
And how extreme sports, you know, like 360, 7, like the progress has been very fast compared to like most
Yep.
human
Like
endeavors.
innovation. Like innovation. Oh, you mean just performance? How better people can get.
Performance, yeah. I mean, like innovation is part, like, I guess it's a little bit of both, but I guess mainly performance.
Performance, like how well people can do in these.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the question they explored was that, like, how has progress been so fast, and does this generalize, right? And I think the conclusion they came to was that people reach flow state in extreme sports because, like, there's injury on the line.
They're so extreme.
Yeah,
They have to really
like if you do like a 1080 and you don't land it, then it's painful, right?
Yeah.
And so like you're really engaged when you're doing it, and so this flow, because the activity naturally leads to flow. I think that's part of the reason why.
And that rapid improvement that's really interesting. Whereas if you're just playing table tennis, stakes aren't as high.
So yeah, it's flow plus I think video recording and like the YouTube scene.
Yeah.
Like you can instantly see if there's someone else in the world doing something better than you. And so you kind of get this dynamic where you.
So that's a very recent book then. It's not.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm feeling that.
Yeah, it's a recent book. And Mark Andreessen recommended this book.
I feel that.
The Rise of Superman.
Yeah, I'm really feeling that. I mean, I'm really feeling this combination of, the skateboard culture plus the alternative. It's like the very Southern California, right? There's the skateboard culture, the alternative music culture, and the filmmaking, amateur filmmaking culture, all coming together, right? So like these people are amateur filmmakers, and they like do all this really innovative stuff with movie making, right? And now with YouTube, and then with skateboarding, with music, and it's like that's like a very synergistic kind of scene. Right? Yeah, I'm really feeling that.
Oh, like or what? Can you talk about it more?
Oh, I don't have anything substantive to say, but I just think that's an interesting scene. I mean, it's not a scene I'm personally part of, but I just find it pretty fascinating as a scene that it's like, especially for young people, like they can get really into it, right?
Oh,
You really get into it. It's a very social scene as well, and like, yeah, I'm just feeling that scene.
Yeah, I this idea of when you're young, you can do an activity that like. The performance feels like real. Like when I was a kid, the main activity was school, right? But it always felt kind of artificial, right? Like, oh, you get an A in this class, but like outside of your school, who cares, right? Whereas something like skateboarding,
you make a video and like everyone loves it. This is an awesome performance.
Yeah, the achievement feels more of like an authentic, like you actually achieved something.
Yeah,
I think.
well, it's like you did something that no one else did. Right?
Yeah,
you did something better than
Yeah. That's part of the appeal of programming is that at a young age you can build stuff that other people actually enjoy. Like school, no one enjoys the output of your schoolwork, right? There these tests and you pass the test, but like it doesn't serve anybody.
Yeah, it's all artificial. I mean, by definition, it is. Right? Yeah, that's right. It's a. I guess it's like. I mean, how does that compare to like a video game? Because in a video game, in theory, when you beat it or whatever, a single player game, I guess. In theory, I guess the simpler games, it is like school in a way because, that outcome is known. You just achieve that score. But like in more innovative games, you can imagine being creative inside the game, right? And like, Minecraft or, even a multiplayer game, you have some awesome move, like in, fighting, you made up some awesome move that no one else is able to. I guess that's kind of like a sport.
Yeah.
In a way, right?
Like I think in the one-player games, the way to achieve is to beat the game as quickly as possible. And so these speed runs.
I guess that's like getting a high grade, where I was like finishing your test really fast.
Yeah. Like I guess the reason why that the academic world, like in high school, is less engaging. Is that there's kind of a cap on performance, right? Like you have a multiple choice math test, like the best you could do is just get them all right, right? Like if you get it done in 30 seconds, like no one really cares, you know. But yeah, like I guess video games is one culture, skateboarding is another culture.
Well, and the whole video game culture of recording as well, right? On Twitch and stuff. And like, it's a performance culture, right? No one cares if you just beat the game normally, but if you do tricks, if you do faster, if you go, have some speed hacks and stuff.
Yeah.
That's very similar to skateboarding. I mean, it's a similar that kind of performance art. Yeah.
Or in the competitive games, it's just...
You can beat other people. And
Yeah.
Right. You have a better strategy and stuff.
Are you into video games at all?
I want to, again, I think that's another thing I watch on YouTube. I don't watch it a lot, but I used to be reasonably into them, but not primarily. I do not play video games.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be kind of into them too, but like these days it's reaching another level, right? You could be competitive, or you could stream on Twitch or YouTube, and like, it's kind of weird how when we grew up, like you're just playing on your console and that's it, right? But
I think it started, I mean, there's all sorts of history behind this, but like the big thing started with like, the kind of Quake generation where they had the first tournaments where they like gave away a Ferrari or whatever as the top prize, and like people were actually fighting in the death match and stuff, and like doing this one-on-one competition. I mean, before they had arcades, right? You always had these arcade competitions where you go to your local arcade and play.
Yeah.
But like this Quake thing is like, this giant auditorium with more people. And now it's like humongous, right? Yeah, I'm really feeling that.
Were you in Quake, like that's kind of beyond me, but...
You're just on Pac-Man? No, I never played competitively, but yeah, I played a good amount.
Like any of those like first-person shooters, I was always awful at for whatever reason. Like... I consider myself pretty good at video games, but like
just that style of
I quit. I kind of made a conscious decision to quit around
that era.
Yeah.
Well, that era of the late '90s. I guess we'll have a few more minutes. We'll just end it at 1 hour.
Okay.
The late '90s was there's two things that were prime. There was the first-person shooter genre, which was Quake, Quake 2, Half-Life, and then those offshoots.
Yeah.
And then there was real-time strategy games, which was Command and Conquer, Red Alert, Warcraft. Was Warcraft Warcraft was
before StarCraft?
Yeah, it was before StarCraft. Yeah. So it was, and the Diablo was not like that. Diablo was like kind of more role. I don't remember Diablo very well, but so there was the real-time strategy, which is your overhead view. You're on a map. You're controlling a bunch of stuff, resources. And there's a first-person shooter, and I could never get good at the real-time strategy ones. I could never manage those because I played those for a bit, and I really like the first-person shooter ones.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I was like amazing at it, but I think I would probably play like every day.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
okay.
I would probably play. I mean, I wasn't like super, and I would play online. Like we had the modems back then. It was like reasonably slow, but I would play online like a good amount, and then later on, there were bots that you could install with the thing, and you just play against the bots, or you would have LAN parties where we play. That's what we play at LAN parties. And toward my tail end, at the end of high school, was Counter-Strike was starting. That was the beginning of Counter-Strike. But I mean, I was never like super good, but I would be like reasonable. Like, I wouldn't be embarrassing.
Yeah.
I would not be embarrassing at it, but I wouldn't be like super good.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I never got into those was that the one computer in our family home with the internet connection was in the parents' bedroom, and so you can't really.
You can't be gaming in there.
Yeah, you can't be gaming at 1 o'clock, right? You're like, get out of here, So
you're playing Quake. Yeah, I fortunately had a computer in my bedroom, which is a rare privilege. But I mean, I didn't remember like it wasn't like playing the games like interfere with other stuff, so it wasn't bad. And I remember like. This is 98. This is when Half-Life came out. And there were these internet... I remember my parents and I would go to Chinatown, or I guess Monterey Park, which is kind of like Chinatown in LA. And they would go shopping at the Ranch 99 market or just at the mall. And they would leave me alone. There was this big mall that we went to, and they had an internet cafe. And it was a bunch of screens with keyboards. And you could just like pay per hour. It wasn't that expensive. And that was amazing because they had a fast connection. And they had Half-Life, and they had like... different mods installed for Half-Life, so it was just and other games. It was amazing because I would just play there, and like that. Literally, the hour or two that they spent shopping would just fly by in an instant because I was so addicted to playing there, and it would just be awesome because like it had a faster connection. And it was just amazing. But I mean, I wouldn't say that like took over my life, but that, you know, I definitely played.
I feel fortunate that we were in that generation because now with Twitch and all that, I feel like it would have been I don't know if I would have done well in school.
Oh, you would have just been on. You would have just been.
I could have been, yeah.
You could have been sapped into the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Shoot. All right. Any last words for books? Well, we got a few more minutes. All right. You can get through whatever you want. I'll let you say your piece. So we diverge off of video games.
I guess one more book, Playing Big. It's written for women, but like this idea that certain people, they grow up with like a lack of, I think, this inability to assert yourself. Mm-hmm. Like in school, you don't have to assert yourself, right? You just turn in your work, right? Mm-hmm. And like I think there are a lot of women who grow up, especially because it's socially acceptable to kind of be meek, right? And you know, so this book is just talking about there are a lot of women who do well in school, and then they enter the corporate work environment and they kind of plateau at middle management, right? And it's like, what are the thought patterns that get you stuck in that middle tier? I mean, some of it's sexism, right? But like, some of it is just certain mental habits of shrinking away from.
How did you find that book in particular?
Oh, Priscilla recommended it. Yeah.
So she was feeling that book.
Yeah, she's like, it's written for women, but I think it's relevant to you too. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll read it. So
she read it and she was feeling it.
Yeah. Well, and then I told her, I bought it on Audible. She's like, hold on, it wasn't that good of a book. But no, I read it now. I'm a bigger fan of it than she is. Yeah. So Playing Big.
Did she do Lean In? Did she read Lean In? Or
she liked this book more than Lean In. Yeah. But yeah, she also recommended that I read Lean In. Have you read Lean In?
No.
Okay. Maybe for next time then. Yeah.
Maybe for next time. I'll Lean In. All right, I'm feeling that. All right, any last words or
I'm good.
Wrap up for the book, your book club?
No, I've basically covered the books I've read recently. Yeah,
the big ones, man.
Books are good, dude.
Oh wow, this is like a public service announcement for your local public library.
And for Audible.
And for Audible.com. This episode was sponsored by Audible.com. It's use your free discount code for Audible.com. And we're so bad at recording promotion. So like this whole thing was just an Audible.com sponsored video. Now people get it. Yeah, like we said it like 20 times. Right? So now you're gonna get all this revenue. All right, we're gonna sign off. All right, feel it?
Yeah.